Hello, everyone. Welcome to yet another edition of the official NJPW English Podcast. My name is Walker Stewart, alongside my good pal, the professor of pro wrestling, Chris Charlton. Chris, yoroshiku onegaishimasu. That was pretty unenthused. I didn't like that.
It's a Wednesday morning.
We need some energy in this podcast.
I need more caffeine in this thing. Yeah, there's the traditional backing accompaniment to the NJPW English Podcast is people buying energy drinks from the vending machine outside the room where I have my mic. So yeah, maybe I could get one of those.
Oh, well, there you go. It'll work out. You know, we're gonna have a lot to talk about today. A lot has happened. We're coming off the back of what was a 10-night Road to series, the 11th night being a massive event for New Beginning in Osaka. The more things change, the more things stay the same on different sides of the playing field. And, of course, it's going to lead us all into talking about New Beginning USA, Trenton, New Jersey, live February 27th. We'll be live with English coverage on special NJPW World pay-per-view presentation. And, you know, we really managed to flesh out a lot more of what this New Beginning USA card, the first time the United States has seen New Japan Pro Wrestling event since Hiroshi Tanahashi's retirement, since the Tokyo Dome, the whole shebang. We're coming off the back of New Beginning in Osaka, and we're kicking it all off in the United States and Jersey.
Yeah, and the ticket sales are picking up very well. So I think we're going to have a nice crowd in New Jersey, and like a big, really strong reception to the card that's been announced there. You know, I mean, I think it's the strongest US card that we've had in quite some time. Well, I mean, I think it's the first US card we've had in quite some time as well.
That'll do it, yeah.
Since last April. But having sort of 5 championship matches there. There's a real kind of almost a Forbidden Door-ish vibe in there, in terms of like cross-promotional matches that we wouldn't normally see. It's a very, very interesting show. I'm excited to see it.
Well, there's certainly going to be a lot to talk about in this affair. Special singles matches. We might very well be seeing if Osaka is anything to base this off of, the final New Japan Pro Wrestling matchup of one David Finlay, as stuff certainly seems to be needing to be figured out in the ranks for the Rebel Savior.
Who knows? We don't have the scoops.
Sure.
People, that's one thing that we don't have. Now we've lost listeners, but
well, I mean, you've seen it before, Chris. Guys have come and go, and there is a certain way that David Finlay made an exit upon the New Beginning in Osaka event that said if his scenery didn't need to change, something about David Finlay needed to change. You've seen the headlines.
I think
you've seen the rumors, and
I think. Yeah, I think that goes to on a lot of different levels that David Finlay needs to take some time and reevaluate, and where he appears to do that, we're not particularly sure. Gabe Kidd said the same thing, right?
Yep.
That he will be back, but he's not exactly sure when. That off the back of a defeat at the hands of Andrade El Idolo. But I think, for the time being, you look at New Beginning USA, that starting off with David Finlay versus Fred Rosser, which is a match I don't think any of us ever expected to see happening. They had a couple of tags, sort of when Fred Rosser was feuding with Tom Lawler, if you remember that, the whole Team Filthy situation. Uh-huh. And so there was a couple of 8-man tags. So there's a very brief clip of Fred Rosser tagging into David Finlay, but that's about all we have to go on. But Rosser's saying that Finlay's dad meant a lot to him when Rosser was making his way in WWE. So here we have a generation removed, and a likely first time last time singles matchup to kick off that card.
Well, if Fred Rosser is expecting David Finlay to get in there and feel any bit the way that Fit was feeling back in WWE at the ripe age of 60 plus years of age, it's going to be a little bit different for Fred Rosser in this go around with this certain Finlay in New Japan Pro Wrestling. That's how we're going to be kicking off the card. I mean, we're going to have big news coming out of that one way or another. David Finlay, Fred Rosser in singles competition. But we talked about not just one, but 5, I believe, championships that are going to be on the line, 5, 6, something along the lines. I mean, you talk about Tomohiro Ishii and Boltin Oleg. I mean, that's not even a match. You don't need to build for that. It doesn't matter. Why is this one happening? It doesn't matter. Strong open weight titles on the line.
Yeah.
Tell me, Chris, that you don't want to see Tomohiro Ishii and Boltin Oleg run into each other for 20 minutes straight.
Yeah, have you seen that clip of like I don't know what country they do it in, where it's just
that new
this
sport.
is the new, it's the new mixed martial art. Where like we're just gonna have people run at each other full pelt, and that had like Hinari said that we just do that in the playground in New Zealand,
Yeah.
It's just what and like Bolton was like, oh, that gives me an idea. So like, I think this is great. I think you have Tomohiro Ishii, who always wants to test the metal, so to speak, of the next generation of Hontai guys, and Boltin Oleg being on that next generation of Hontai guys, never openweight 6-man champion, and could be leaving with 2 belts. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, not a lot of opportunities in 2025 for Tomohiro Ishii to find defenses of that strong openweight title. Won the title, got one defense in against Joel Maloney back at Resurgence, and ever since then, we haven't been back to the United States. And there was the whole order and decree from President Tanahashi of, well, we're going to keep the strong championships strong in the United States, and we're going to keep the IWGP for the most part over in Japan and over in Asia. And so Ishii looking for his second defense in this run. Going to be an interesting match to see, but going from intrigue to intrigue, I couldn't believe this. I had to research this a couple of times just to make sure this is correct, because for as many places as these two men have been, it's a shock to see they've never run into one another in a singles competition. I'm talking Taiji Shimori and Ricochet, the AEW National Championship on the line. Ricochet's path, of course, taking him through Dragon Gate, now from New Japan Pro Wrestling into WWE into AEW. And, I mean, really a career resurgence for Ricochet that, if I'm looking at this from the New Japan lens, really, honest to God, Chris, started back at the Tokyo Dome main event against Zack Sabre Jr., a Tokyo Dome main event that even in loss for the IWGP World Heavyweight Championship really kind of forced Ricochet to kick it up a gear, and you started seeing a bit more of an edge to Ricochet on AEW television, and now a national champion taking on Taiji Ishimori.
The Super Junior Tag Tournament semi-final 2016. That's as close as they've gotten. Who were the respective partners for Taiji Ishimori and Ricochet? Don't look at Cage Match.
Oh, I know. So I think Ishimori's was ACH. I feel like I have that unlocked. I could not tell you who Ricochet was standing next to.
That's somebody we've already talked about today.
Really? Tomohiro Ishii. Why am I blanking?
David Finlay.
Oh, okay.
Ricochet's partner was David Finlay in the Super Junior Tag Tournament in 2016.
Well, 2016 was a different year.
Very different year on every sort of level. Different Ishimori, different Ricochet. But yeah, I mean, it's two guys that really, if you want to see that as a junior heavyweight dream match, then you've got it right there. I mean, Ricochet, former Best of the Super Junior winner himself, and like, I think underrated, I think, in terms of how they've how both of them have sort of defined a generation, or really shaped a generation of junior heavyweights. So Ricochet, even though obviously in America it's more of a sort of mixed class, and he challenged for the World Heavyweight Championship in the Tokyo Dome. I mean, I think like the evolution of both of them as junior heavyweight wrestlers, and the time between, as I said, I mean, like their last meetings in any regard was nearly 10 years ago, right. And now here they come full circle, as you said, like you've got that sort of Dragon Gate pass that they both share, albeit ships sort of passing in the night. I think it's going to be a really good match, definitely, for sure.
And if I am correct on my money here, the AEW National Championship, the first time it will be defended or contested for outside of AEW, will be here in a New Japan Pro Wrestling ring on Trenton, New Jersey. So a very, very big night for New Beginning USA. I can't wait to see Taiji Ishimori take on Ricochet for the title. Another championship match, one of the first matches that we saw announced in totality, Chris, for this card, Trenton, New Jersey, moved a lot of tickets. El Phantasmo versus Konosuke Takeshita, the World Television Championship. It all starts back at the beginning of really Tokyo Dome season. Konosuke Takeshita walking out without the IWGP World Heavyweight title, and you and I questioned in the booth alongside, well, man, I'm sure we're going to see in Takeshita's corner, that being Rocky Romero. Question being, well, how long is it going to be before we see the Alpha, Konosuke Takeshita, in championship contention again? And we got our answer very soon whenever he stared down the barrel of a gun from El Phantasmo.
Yeah, so TV title on the line. Obviously, I mean, they've had their sort of back and forths over the last couple of years. It was interesting. Phantasmo finally gets his first singles win, albeit they've had draws before. They had a draw over the TV title, right, last May. Mm-hmm. And then LP finally was able to beat Takeshita in the G1, day 2 of the G1. And you know how long, don't go to cage match, you know how long that match was?
Oh, God, I was there. Oh my, I couldn't tell you how long.
All right, it was 15 minutes and 2 seconds. So it was 2 seconds over, the time limit. So, I mean, here we've had, they've gone to a draw over the TV title before. LP has been able to beat Takeshita, but he hasn't been able to beat him within the time limit. Obviously, if Takeshita, if Takeshita, Takeshita is the one that has to beat LP and not the other way around. But I think, right, Phantasmo wants to beat Konosuke Takeshita within that time limit. And, Take is coming off of another time limit draw against John Moxley in Australia last week. And that being for the 20-minute, I believe, Continental Championship. And so, here we have a situation where, Takeshita's got to sort of rethink his strategy when it comes to time and getting in that 15-minute sprint.
Well, Phantasmo has been the man of controlled time for the better part of, really the last year or so. First won that World TV title back at, not this year's Tokyo Dome, but last year's Tokyo Dome event, kicking off 2025. So, it's going to be an interesting one to see. Takeshita has had the number of El Phantasmo more often than not, but that's going to lead us into the World Television Championship match, February 27th in Trenton, New Jersey. Chris, it was a big shock to me, and a big shock to you, and a big shock to everyone whenever Ricochet laid out his challenge to Taiji Ishimori for the AEW National Championship. But he didn't lay out this challenge alone. In fact, Ricochet and Gates of Agony, Bishop Khan and Toa Leona, really stealing a moment after what was a phenomenal tag team championship matchup between Oscar and Yuto Ice against Shota Umino and Yuya Uemura. It would be the Knockout Brothers victorious, and in the middle of the celebration, well, Gates of Agony would strike, and the IWGP Tag Team titles now up for grabs, New Beginning USA.
Yeah, I think probably I think we needed a little bit of a reminder of the names of Bishop Khan and Toa Leona, and maybe in Osaka at the time there was a little bit of a stun in terms of who were those guys. But yeah, I mean, the World Tag League of a couple of years ago, and now they've become a much stronger team and a better team in their own right. Almost you could say unrecognizably so. So, here they have coming over after Knockout Brothers, who are on a phenomenal, when it comes to tag team wrestling, a sort of, you could almost say, a generational run at this point, albeit, 6 months deep or whatever. But, I think the interesting thing here is the dynamic of when they were in Japan 2 years ago, because when they were in Japan 2 years ago, they were they were teaming with Oscar Libre, as we knew him then, in six-man action. He was their assigned young lion for the undercards of World Tag League, and they were taking Yuta Nakashima out for dinner and this, that, and the other. And so here we have 2 years down the stretch, two teams that have really come into their own rights on different sides of the Pacific Ocean. and trying to prove to one another how far they've come. So that's always a great story to tell.
Well, not the only Ring of Honor and AEW stars that are going to be looking for IWGP Gold on the evening. We talked about Ricochet. We've talked about the rest of the Demand and Gates of Agony, Bishop Khan and Toa Leona. Let's talk a little bit about Athena, the supposed forever Ring of Honor Women's World Champion. And I might say supposed, but Athena hasn't been able to prove me or many other people wrong yet. The Ring of Honor Women's World Champion.
3 years, right? Jeez.
Yeah.
3 years?
Yeah.
Probably more than that.
It has been a long reign for Athena, but it has been one of dominance over in Ring of Honor, really, making the Women's World Championship the standout title, that could be considered over the Ring of Honor World Men's Championship or any other title that is over in that division. So, you look at Athena and you look at the top of the World Wonder Ring and Stardom, you look at the IWGP Women's Champion in Shuri, the only woman in the past calendar year in Stardom who has managed to knock out, to put down Saya Kamitani, who still reigns as World of Stardom champion. But good Lord, Shuri has sent Kamitani on a bit of a wreck. A lot of injury bug hitting Saya Kamitani ever since that battle with Shuri. And meanwhile, Shuri, the new women's champion as of the Tokyo Dome, will be defending that title against the Ring of Honor Women's World Champion in Athena.
Well, I guess Shuri has, as you said, she's got the track record of beating the supposedly unbeatable. And so that has led to what this match is. I think Athena, and I think rightfully so, is constantly upset at a perceived lack of respect. I think for somebody who's been ROH Women's Champion for so long, then I think she's relatively, and yet it seems weird to say, but relatively incredibly underrated on the broader wrestling sphere. And so best way to sort of instantly make sure that she gets the respect she feels she deserves is to beat Shuri and win the IWGP Women's Championship. So I think they're two very difficult women to beat. And and that was one of those first matches that got announced and shifted a lot of tickets on the back of that, because for a lot of fans this is again kind of a dream encounter that both women have wanted for a long time, and now we're finally able to do it.
Yeah, it feels almost as if we're getting Forbidden Door a little bit early, and I really think a lot of that being spearheaded by what we saw out of Andrade El Idolo and Gabe Kidd in Osaka. And really the comments, and very blunt, very blatant comments out of Andrade El Idolo toward Yota Tsuji in Tsuji's own post-match comments. Andrade addressing Tsuji and saying, I know you hate AEW, but I'm not here for AEW. I'm here for the IWGP title. And of course, that leads us to our main event. Andrade El Idolo challenging Yota Tsuji, the first defense for the IWGP Global Heavyweight Champion post-Tokyo Dome. Talk to me about it, Chris.
Well, I think Andrade sees, there's a lot of commonalities between both of them, and Andrade, and Tsuji both sort of share that Ingobernable spirit. La Sombra was part of the original Los Ingobernables.
Yes.
And it was La Sombra that invited Tetsuya Naito to join Los Ingobernables, which begat Los Ingobernables de Japón, which began Tetsuya Naito winning the IWGP title, throwing it into the air, and Yota Tsuji seeing that on TV and saying, I remember when Hiroshi Tanahashi asked me to be a wrestler. This seems pretty cool, actually. I'll do it. Yeah. So, were it not for Andrade El Idolo, we wouldn't have Yota Tsuji, perhaps, as the current double IWGP champion. I think Yota Tsuji has a very clear idea of what he wants to do with that global championship, which is to say, defend it against wrestlers from outside organizations, and to do it on an international basis, and yet to have it on a similar layer of prestige to the IWGP Heavyweight Championship. I think this ticks all of those boxes in terms of what Yota Tsuji wants to do with the title. I think when you look at the two stylistically as well, two guys with a lot of explosivity, a lot of power, and very, very athletic. So, I think you've got a good recipe for a really great main event in New Jersey.
There's only so much pressure in my mind, Chris, that a man like Yota Tsuji can take, or really any man in the sport of professional wrestling. I think Tsuji wears it more confidently and will wear it better than almost anyone that you're going to find on any roster in the sport. But at a certain point, things are going to come crumbling down. And I am not saying that's anytime soon. I'm not saying that's anytime this year. And I'm not saying that, Andrade El Idolo is going to be the man to force it. But you can only go so long being a double champion. And that's kind of the curse that you will see, not just in New Japan, but in pro wrestling as a whole. You're focused on two separate divisions, especially Tsuji really looking to make the global heavyweight and the IWGP, the V4 heavyweight championship, really the most predominant divisions in New Japan Pro Wrestling. That is a lot for one man to shoulder, and I have to wonder if the time is counting down faster for Tsuji than he might realize.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, certainly, if he's defending that global championship, when you look at the sort of that defense road after February, you could say he has the benefit of having no defenses scheduled, at least right now, during the middle of the New Japan Cup. And I think I've got the feeling that Yota Tsuji would be the type to say that I don't want to defend the championship during the New Japan Cup. But the point of the tournament is to determine a number one contender for that. And Tsuji, with his mentality, I suspect will not have a heavyweight championship on his schedule defended until Sakura Genesis. I think at the same time, for as much as the weight of the world on the shoulders, I think that's what we were talking about Hiroki Goto last year and his defense record, and he held it very, very admirably and defended it more often than any other champion that held that version of the title.
Right.
So I think with that regard, and then you add in Yota Tsuji being younger, relatively injury-free, and at the same time, really bounded, determined, clearly mentally in terms of his vision of what professional wrestling is, whether that stirs up trouble in the back and in the front office or not. I think Yota Tsuji is somebody that is someone with a point to prove, isn't he? And I think that in that goes a whole hell of a lot more than just I want to rake up more defenses and I want to get more paychecks. I think when you have guys with the chip on the shoulder, I think that matters an awful lot more. And I think that's when that's where you get to someone, say, like the Knockout Brothers, and why they were able to get up to V3 so far, right? V3? V4. They're looking for V4 in Trenton. The reason why they were able to retain those championships, in my opinion, was because they had a mission statement in terms of finally bringing stability and finally being the team in the tag team division, and to the point where they are, I think you could make an argument that Knockout Brothers, if they continue on the track they're on, they could threaten the IWGP heavyweight champion Yota Tsuji in terms of drawing power, right. Because they have that anger and they have that dog in them, Walker. That's what they say, don't they? And I think that Yota Tsuji very much has that dog in him. Andrade, certainly has had success in his own right very recently, and a great run that he's had of being very, very high caliber competition. Whose dog is bigger? We'll find out in Trenton.
Well, Chris, we got a lot of other stuff that's happening on New Beginning in USA, and I don't want to dive too deep into all of it right now. Kushida and El Desperado taking on Jordan Oliver and Alec Price. Yeah, I mean, that's going to be fun. There's another. There's going to be a lot of other stuff happening, I'm sure, on the occasion. Those are your announced matches. Big business in New Beginning USA, and we're not trying to downplay anything whatsoever, but we got big business over in the USA. We got big business down in Mexico that's traveling all the way over to Japan, and I mean the day that we are recording this episode is the kickoff to FantasticaMania, and I want to talk to you just a little bit about a couple of the highlights coming your way.
Yeah, FantasticaMania starts, literally today in a few hours' time as we're speaking about this in Yoyogi, and it's always like a great time just to sort of celebrate a different culture in professional wrestling, you know, and I think it brings a different crowd out. We got we're expecting a really good crowd in Yoyogi this evening, and I know like the last two nights in Crockery Hall are both sold out long time in advance. And yeah, it's a unique atmosphere every single time.
Yeah, I mean, I remember last year, I mean, it was my first time getting to call some action for some MLW Gold, right? And that was like just, you know, a nice little switch up there. The MLW tag team titles with Satoshi Kojima and Okumura. And then I remember that incredible Mystico versus Averno MLW World Middleweight Championship matchup that we saw back in Corkin Hall as well. So, you know, like there's just, you never know what you're going to be getting into, but we do know some of the things we're getting into. We have some matches announced. We have all of our matches announced, in fact. And
well, not all of them, because like we have the FantasticaMania Tag Team Tournament. You see,
that's it.
And so that's going to shape the you know, whoever advances is going to shape at least the forthcoming cards that we have in Osaka as well. Yeah, who do you like in that, Walker? What have we got?
Well, I mean, it's hard for me to bet against Shomakato and Iho Desuka Jr. I mean. So, no, I mean, well, in all seriousness, God bless Shomakato, but I think they're going to ship him off in a box that is, you know, it's going to be marked return to sender on the way back. And I don't think his excursion's going to last too long, just with the way that Shomakato tends to rub people. But nice guy, but a little bit jovial. And I think too jovial. Jeez. Too jovial for the Lucha scene.
Snug on Shomakato today. Jeez.
Chris, the Luchadors, they play hard. All right, I don't know if Kato's willing to play that hard.
He got into. We can say this now, can't we? Yeah, yes. He got into trouble. That like your first FantasticaMania was 2 years ago, and he got into he got yelled at like because the young lions are supposed to be, you know, outside the bus helping the bags off the bus and being very sort of you know, what's going some it is, and very respectful to every single one of their seniors. And Shomakato was you know, I think the Lucha boys were playing sort of slap and tickle and ribbing around the square with Shomakato and having a nice time with him, and he was laughing back, and he got chewed out for it.
he's probably politicking to Ultimo Guerrero. I don't know what that guy's doing.
Oh, well, you know, Ultimo Guerrero and Show in this tag tournament. That's
what a combination there. What a combination. I mean, you know, I think that the things to highlight for me, you know, the return of Atlantis back to a New Japan Pro Wrestling ring, which is always great to see. Atlantis and Atlantis Jr. going to be joining the fray. Tiger Mask competing in his final FantasticaMania. And I think that there is going to be a heavy point to prove there, teaming alongside Stigma in this FantasticaMania tag team tournament. I'm looking at, and I think it's hard to bet against these two men, the El Sky team duo of Mystico and Mascara Dorada.
Yeah, I think that's got to be the favorite team in my opinion. You know,
right?
But yeah, I think Tiger Mask and Stigma. That's an interesting duo. Of course, like that's the annual Black Cat Memorial match that we'll have on night one. Sort of remembering Black Cat, who was, you know, almost like the Rocky Romero or the Okumura of his day in terms of being a back and forth, you know, conduit between Mexico and Japan, and Stigma, the nephew of Black Cat. So, you know, being teaming there with Tiger Mask for what would be Tiger Mask's last Black Cat Memorial match. You know, I mean, it is. You know, obviously we remember Black Cat every single year, but it's you know, it's time is what time does. But you know, to have Tanahashi was always part of those matches. Now he's retired, and Tiger Mask retiring as well. So it is a little bit sad, but a fact of life that you know, the people that share a lot with Black Hat are moving on. But still, it's I don't know where I was going with that. But like, yeah, I mean, I think Stigma and Tiger Mask is one to look for.
Well, we got a multitude of singles matches. Of course, that tag team tournament taking place over the course of 3 days. All 3 of those days, video on demand English coverage. So I'm excited to solo in the booth for a lot of Lucha Libre in the month of February. But you're getting to call the big ones, all right? And I mean the big ones in terms of, there is nothing that we look forward to more in these FantasticaMania series than, these matches, especially in Korakuen Hall. Right, because everyone knows Korakuen Hall is where you ball out. I mean, that's just that. Especially when the luchadors come up, they're excited to be in Kyoto. They're excited to go to Osaka, but everyone's waiting for Korakuen Hall, and that's where a lot of these big singles bouts are happening. Máscara Dorada and Hechicero. I mean, oh my God. We're talking, we've long been talking about Máscara Dorada as being the future of Lucha Libre, and now I guess you could consider, in the way of a man like Yota Tsuji now becoming more so the present generation of Lucha Libre on the younger end of that equation, right? And, Máscara Dorada taking on a long-standing veteran, former CMLL World Heavyweight Champion, and a guy who's really splitting a lot of his time between CMLL and AEW in Hechicero.
Yeah, I mean, that's always, that's one of those great stars make fights situations, so Hechicero trying to stretch Máscara Dorada and Dorada trying to fly and hit and run and be on the escape. I think that's an easy match to look out for. And Máscara Dorada has beaten Hechicero twice, right? Once in Mexico, once in the United States. Right. So the question whether Hechicero can get the win back, and then again, somebody who's never been able to beat his opponent, the main event on the other night, Soberano Jr., has never beaten Mystico 1-on-1. Right. And now you have both of them. I mean, that is a real sort of main event in Arena Mexico, and now being that Arena Mexico Friday night feel being ported over to Friday night in Korakuen Hall. I mean, that's right there is basically the top 2 stars in CMLL right now going head to head with one another. I think that's going to be unmissable. So I mean, it's quite a long day on February the 27th for everybody. Yeah, certainly in the United States. At least in Japan, we'll have the time to sleep in between. But I mean, if you're from our end, it's 6:30 as we always start in Korakuen Hall. Finishing up probably around about 9. We can go back, take a kip, be up at 10 a.m. like Japan time, and watch New Beginning USA. But I sympathize with people perhaps on the east coast of the United States that get up at 4:30 for their Korakuen Hall fix, and then they're going to plug through and stick around all the way to what, 8 p.m. local start? Is that correct?
Yes,
New Beginning USA?
It is. Yes, it is.
Yeah. So lots of caffeine on that day. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. No, we'll be doing it. We'll be running the gauntlet on that night. A lot to come when it comes to FantasticaMania, New Beginning USA, and also we cannot forget to mention. I know I was a little harsh on him earlier, so I'll give the shine right now. Shomakato, we're sending him off, and all jokes aside, Shomakato is, he's one of those young lions, Chris, that, sometimes you and I have conversations when we first start seeing guys ringside before they actually make their in-ring debut, and just off of look or watching them do the workouts in the ring before our doors open, right? We have those conversations where it's like, does this guy just off the rip look like someone who's going to make it? And I think a lot of people kind of had their back turned to Shomakato for a little bit at the beginning with the way that he came in off the back of that Okada television show, right? And just kind of, hey, what's your point here? What do you have to prove in professional wrestling? And I think Kato's been talking a long time about wanting to go to Mexico. I think it's a really cool thing that we're going to get to send him off in Korakuen Hall.
Well, we'll see how the experience shapes him. I hope it molds him, and I hope that Shomakato keeps what makes Shomakato so endearing. I think is the fact that he's always got the brightest smile in the room. For a situation in Noge Dojo where you're sort of broken apart and built back up again, and you sort of see it when it comes to some personalities like Daiki Nagai, for instance, kind of gives them that chip and that focus and that anger that you hear in his backstage comments. You saw what it did to Zane J, sent him off the deep end completely and then joining United Empire. But for someone in Shomakato who has gone through everything that they put you through in Noke, which is no small feat at all, and yet every time you see him, like, he makes sure to say hello, and he does it with such a massive smile on his face rather, that he seems so happy to see you every single day. That is really, we need more people like him in pro wrestling. So good kid, and let's hope that his experience in Mexico is a very positive one, because he's been looking forward to it, as you said, for a long time now.
Well, off the back of a couple of young lions taking their exit, and Katsuya Morishima well on his way to WXW in Germany, by the way. We want to send a healthy congratulations. We can send a stealthy one too, but we want to be able to hear it. We are going to be saying goodbye. Stealthy, yes. Saying goodbye to Shomakato and Katsuya Morishima, saying hello to a new young lion. This is the first time in a while that, at least in my time in New Japan Pro Wrestling, where I've seen not a set of young lions debut, but rather just one young lion appear out of thin air. This being Taisei Nakahara, Fukuoka native, 25 years of age, a little bit of amateur wrestling experience back in his high school days, and will be making his debut on night one of New Japan Cup.
Yeah, congratulations. Welcome to him. He's spent quite an amount of time in the system getting ready, and now out of the oven. 25 years old, so having a little bit of a sense of maturity, I think, to bring to the table. But obviously it's going to be an uphill climb, and nobody sort of expects him to win out the gate. He's got Tatsuya Matsumoto in his first bout. It'd be interesting to see Matsumoto in that sense, as someone part of the Goto Revolutionary Army, and now having a little bit of seniority in the dojo. So does he carry a little bit more swagger around himself with Nakahara? But good luck to him. So that's going to be a little bit of an earlier start. We're going to have a kickoff 6 p.m. local time, Wednesday, March the 4th, and then we're going to go straight into the New Japan Cup, which is everybody's favorite time, where we all write brackets up and they all get demolished within
night
2 days. I am gonna I tell you what, I will pound through these brackets. Give me your picks and then keep them in the back of your mind, and then we'll see if we can settle on a New Japan Cup 2026 winner. First round, March 4th, Yuya Uemura, Great Okan. That's quite
yeah. I mean,
you're picking Uemura.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm at the point when it comes to New Japan Cup where it's like, I look at the left side of the bracket, I look at the right side of the bracket, and I'm like, this just makes sense. Like, I'm looking at a couple of names, and I'm like, it's kind of do or die for a couple of you at this point. And then there's a couple of names in here. I mean, we have a few first-time names in this New Japan Cup. Oscar, Yuto Ice, Aaron Wolf. Oh, that's going to be one to talk about. Hartley Jackson as well. And what? Is this not a first time? I think
we'll get to we'll get to them later on in this deal. But I want to pick apart your Uemura over Great Okan pick. I also have Uemura over Great Okan, but I think that Great Okan feels the pinch, as he feels very often at this point in time. And I think often that first night in Korakuen Hall is ripe for an upset or two.
Right.
And I wonder, the more I look at it, the more I sort of wonder with Great Okan, especially with the threat. So March the 10th, the winner of that match will face Drilla Maloney. And I think Great Okan will be motivated, to get past Uemura. They've only had 2 singles matches before their 1-on-1 overall. Those both being under KOPW rules, if you remember.
Yep.
So, I mean, this is a different set of circumstances. Great Okan motivated, I think, by losing in Osaka, being put down by a Driller Killer by Drilla Maloney. So I think seeing him in the distance on March 10th might give Great Okan the giddy up to win this one. But at the same time, I have Yuya Uemura going all the way to the finals. So, what do I know?
Okay. So I'll say this: like I did I busted out my little marker. I printed out my bracket. I drew on it. It's drawn. At least something draws around here.
You drew.
I drew, and I put a little marker on a piece of paper. I can tell you, I have Uemura going as far as the semifinals in my predictions. So
we'll see. Okay, we're going to disagree later on in this. In this run. Okay. Well, also March 4th, Aaron Wolf, Don Farley.
Yeah, that's
welcome to the New Japan Cup, Aaron Wolf.
Yeah, it's going to be a hard one in the way of there's who you want to win, and there's just mathematics on paper. What makes the most sense coming out of New Beginning in Osaka, and it's the reality being the numbers game beat Aaron Wolf for the Never Openweight Championship. Sure, Ren Narita also did that. He was there, but so was Yujiro Takahashi, and so was everyone else. And so, that being the case, I think that's going to be the MO for a majority, if not all, of House of Torture in this tournament. And we got a lot of House of Torture in this tournament. We have the Never Openweight champion, Ren Narita. We have Yujiro Takahashi. We have Chase Owens. And for that reason, I think there's going to be a lot of that surrounding. So, I hate to say it, but Don Fale might have to be moving on to round 2 in my predictions.
Yeah, I think that's... I think I had Don Fale winning. Yeah. And I think the question is Aaron Wolf now, he's been handed his first loss, and I think there's a little bit maybe of the self-doubt is gonna creep in with Aaron Wolf, of maybe I was lucky in the Tokyo Dome, and maybe I wasn't quite ready, or I was too naive to think that at this stage of my career I could say to Ren Narita, let's go 1-on-1 and let's have a real hard fighting Shibata Ishii style match. Just like it was 10 years ago when I started watching. I think it sort of showed perhaps his naivety when it came to the House of Torture. So it would be at the same time, I think Aaron Wolf beating Don Fale would be a hell of a giddy up. I think if Wolf were to beat Fale, then I think he would, and the winner gets Shingo Takagi.
Right.
So, if I'm sort of thinking on that sort of northwest quadrant of the bracket, I think Don Fale's logic would be to do more work for the house and put Aaron Wolf out of commission. And I think at that standpoint, even though Fale's been, people forget, he's been a 2-time finalist in this New Japan Cup. So he is capable of going on a big run. But is Don Fale more sort of thinking, I have a job to do, and that job is to put Aaron Wolf out of commission? And then after that, is he setting himself up for perhaps a fall from grace against Shingo Takagi? I'm not sure Don Fale would be able to beat Shingo, but I think if Aaron Wolf can beat Don Fale, then I think he can beat Shingo. Does that make sense? I think that sort of reaffirming himself would give him the edge. So I think it's a close one, but I would go Fale over Aaron Wolf, and then that sets up Shingo Takagi against Fale, and I've got a feeling Shingo Takagi could be able to beat Don Fale and go straight into the quarters. And
that is very much what I have written on my piece of paper here. And that is like a bit of a grim reality. Well, the real grim reality is Don Fale into the quarterfinals. But that's beside the point. I'd love to see Aaron Wolf in his first New Japan Cup really establish some order and have a run to the semifinal or the final or a tournament victory. But I think that we might be a little bit longer away from that based off the results that we saw in Osaka.
Yeah, well, we'll see. But it's based on the results of Osaka. Ren Narita is the Never Openweight champion. And Narita has Taichi in the first round, winner getting Tomohiro Ishii. So 2 years ago, Taichi gets bounced by Ren Narita, thanks to some House Torture tactics, shall we say. Last year, Taichi goes, oh, thank God, Gabe Kidd beat Ren Narita, and I can focus on having a great match with Gabe Kidd. Thinks Taichi. They were on the road to that. Ren Narita interfered, and Gabe Kidd lost via count-out. Taichi advanced. So a lot of very ill will, bad blood and anger from Taichi towards Ren Narita on this one. The prospect, perhaps, of Taichi then facing his tag team partner in Tomohiro Ishii into the second round, as well as potentially earning himself an Ever Openweight Championship shot, you would think, down the road. Who do you have over Taichi and Ren Narita?
I again, one of those picks that I hate to come out with, but I'm a bit of a realist nowadays. That's what pro wrestling will do to you. And Ren Narita being the choice that I go with there. And, I really characterize the first round or two of the New Japan Cup for Ren Narita in a majority of the results that could happen as Narita testing himself against former Never Openweight champions, some of them being considered some of the greatest people to hold the Never Openweight title in recent memory. And I'm talking, if Narita beats Taichi, a former Never champion in his own right, by the way, Narita gets Tomohiro Ishii, and that's the man that a lot of people will call the greatest Never Openweight champion outside of maybe a Shingo Takagi or a Katsuyori Shibata. And so, Narita really getting that opportunity. And you look further on down the line, Boltin Oleg, Hanare also in that quadrant of the bracket as well that could face off against Narita. I think that it's going to be a bit of a Never Openweight gambit in that corner of the New Japan Cup bracket.
Yeah, I can see that sort of theme of Narita. I could see him take great delight, especially in the frames of how Aaron Wolf talked about that title match in Osaka, and then Narita delighting in winning that interference pact in under 2 minutes or whatever. I think that Narita is sort of saying, I want to face all the never coded wrestlers as Never champion, and then beat them the way that I apparently have chosen how to wrestle. I can see that being kind of in his mindset now as Narita, the official new leader of House of Torture. So yeah, I mean, I wouldn't discount Taichi, and I think like the potential of Taichi, meeting with Tomohiro Ishii again. Taichi and Ishii in New Japan Cup so transformative to who Taichi was. Right. And for back-to-back years, for him to wrestle his tag team partner, Zack Sabre Jr. last year and Ishii this year, I think that's an intriguing prospect as well. But yeah, I feel maybe the odds are a little bit too much for Ren Narita. El Phantasmo Boltin Oleg is interesting. LP might still be TV champion, might not be, against 1/3 the Never Openweight six-man champions.
Yeah, that one is going to be a difficult one. I think in the way of, Phantasmo, we talk about it all the time, a wealth of experience, but the singles game outside of the TV title division has not exactly been El Phantasmo's strength as of recent. And to be quite honest with you, even within the TV championship division, it's not been as much of his strength as he's wanted it to be. A lot more time limit draws in the World TV title defenses we've seen of El Phantasmo than he's ever been comfortable with. No one, especially in Phantasmo's position, wants to hold on to the title by the skin of their teeth, right? And I think that the result at New Beginning USA is going to play a major factor into the type of man, the type of athlete, the El Phantasmo that we get coming into this New Japan Cup. And sadly to say, no matter which side of El Phantasmo we get coming into the New Japan Cup, I still have Boltin Oleg going through in round one.
Yeah, I like Boltin in this one. I think just in terms of sheer power. At the same time, if there was a place where LP was going to beat Boltin, it would be in Korakuen Hall. Yes. Yeah, I think let's not forget as well, Boltin might have the pickup here of potentially being strong openweight champion as well. So having more singles gold around him, and if that's the case, then I think winning gets to be contagious, and you kind of want more of it. And Boltin would see, especially if LP happens to have the TV championship still, if he can get past Konosuke Takecha, he might see lick his chops and say, well, this is a chance for me to be another champion. So I have Boltin on a deep run. And I think that Boltin's going to beat Phantasmo and then Hinari in the second round. Up in the northeast side of the bracket, Yoshihashi and Jake Lee. Jake Lee just off the IWGP Heavyweight Championship challenge in the beginning in Osaka, looking to go on a deep run here. And the potential for Yoshihashi, or the inspiration you would have to say for Yoshihashi, would be to get past Jake Lee and be able to wrestle Hirooki Goto on March the 13th.
Yeah, you can talk about inspiration as much as you want, Chris. I don't know if Jake Lee is exactly the type to care about inspiration. has certainly attempted to steal away a lot of inspiration from New Japan Pro Wrestling fans all over when he wrestled in the main event in Osaka. I mean, Jake Lee versus Yoshihashi, I'm calling it one way, and if I'm wrong, then I'm wrong, and I've been wrong before, but I don't only believe Jake Lee is going to beat Yoshihashi. I think it might be quick. I think there's going to be a need for Jake Lee in this tournament to make every single victory as quick as possible. And part of that stemming from what we saw in his only singles match of the year so far, Jake Lee going a deep round with Yota Tsuji, and it was that depth, that length of time that allowed Tsuji to win out on the clock and to have a longer gas tank. We've talked about the physical limitations of Jake Lee. Jake Lee is well aware of those limitations, and for that reason, I think it's going to be a quick one over Yoshihashi, but I don't think it's going to be a quick one over Hiroki Goto, and I think that's something Goto is going to be able to overcome to advance into his own quarterfinal run.
Okay. Oscar and Callum Newman, that's the other side of the New Japan Cup matches on anniversary on March the 6th. I would say if this was a tag team match, then I would have Knockout Brothers over any combination with Callum Newman in it. But this being singles out of Oscar's wheelhouse, I think it's going to be a difficult one. Your classic sort of power versus speed or speed versus size scenario. But Newman is on a tear after beating David Finlay very handily in Osaka, and I think that he's going to get past Oscar in the first.
Yeah, I agree with you. I have nothing else to add. I mean, I think that it was a definitive win for Callum Newman over David Finlay, and that's going to be a big high to ride into anniversary time in New Japan Cup 2026.
March the 8th is going to be the last night of first round action. Shota Umino and Chase Owens. You can never discount the bracket buster Chase Owens. Certainly, he would like to tell you about the number of brackets that he's busted.
He'll remind you he's beaten Tanahashi in singles action. He's beaten Ishii in singles action. I hear about it every New Japan Cup season. I can't wait for him to join me on commentary again to say it all over again. But I think that every dog has his day, and Chase Owens, a former war dog, but Chase Owens in House of Torture, I think it's really been a reset point for Chase recently, a bit of a different presentation than we've seen in years past, and I think for that reason Chase needs a victory here. But Shota Umino, finalist in last year's New Japan Cup winner 2025, and David Finlay not announced to be in this year's tournament, and for that reason I think that you have to argue Shota Umino is a big heavy favorite to win it all this year.
Right, so I think we both agree on Shota, and then the other, I would have to assume this is the main event, March 8th, in Hyogo Yuto, Ice, and Ryohei Oiwa. So you're calling back, of course, to New Year Dash, but you're calling back really to the dojo days, and Ice really hating this bastard Ryohei Oiwa, who's had all of nature's and God's gifts handed to him, and now in this position in a one-on-one environment. But I'm going with Oiwa for this. Who do you have, Oiwa or Ice?
Man, you and I spend too much time together. Yeah, I mean, Oiwa was who I have marked down already, and I think that there's off the back of a lot of need to win situations, retribution from World Tag League, retribution from New Year Dash, and a lot of comments from Yuto Ice about, we've talked about the NPC comments toward Oiwa before, and Oiwa has even addressed those after winning World Tag League back in 2025. The singles game has always seemed a little bit more of Oiwa's strength than we've gotten to see it be Yuto Ice's strength, and for that reason, and also knowing what Oiwa is going to be fighting forward toward March 14th, and that's a rematch from last year's New Japan Cup between himself and of mentor and Zack Sabre Jr., I think that there's going to be a lot more of a need for Oiwa to win here.
Okay. So we've got our second round. March the 10th starts the second round, so we're going to go a little bit faster through these, I think. We both have Uemura right in the first. Yeah. Uemura, Drilla, Maloney. Like I said, Uemura, I've got going all the way to the final. So I have Uemura over Drilla Maloney, but I think it's going to be a hard-fought one. And
this is where we start to split a little bit, Chris. I think Drill Maloney is going to put down Yuya Uemura on March 10th, should it come to be.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Well, we'll see, because, then that sets up an interesting one on the other side of the bracket, because I think we both agree Don Fale, although I dispute it, I think Aaron Wolf's in with a good chance, but, Don Fale beating Aaron Wolf, and then, neither of us think that Don Fale can beat Shingo Takagi. So then you're setting up Shingo versus Driller in the quarters.
Yes, and that is, I think that is the long play for it. Correct me if I'm wrong, March 15th, Yamanashi. If I am to be believed, and Yamanashi, a hometown for Shingo Takagi. I think for that reason, Takagi is going to have. Takagi's typically had kind of a quick burst start to certain single round elimination tournaments recently, and I think for that reason, Takagi is kind of on the sprint to Yamanashi. Now, whether he makes it past Yamanashi, I think that's going to be a different animal to talk about. But I have Maloney and Takagi on my list for good reason.
All right. We both had Ren Narita getting past Taichi. Narita would have Ishii next, and I would go Ren Narita over Tomohiro Ishii. If he has the wills, the smarts, and the odds and the backing in his corner to beat Taichi, I think Ishii would potentially follow the same fate.
Yeah, I have the same thing. Ren Narita over Tomohiro Ishii, and that would of course lead us to, I believe we both said Bolton Oleg over El Phantasmo. That would be March 12th as well, seeing Bolton Oleg versus
Bolton and
Hinare.
Whoa, that'd be great. That would be great.
Correct me if I'm wrong, G134, I believe we saw Bolton and Hinare, Block B, and that was Bolton's first G1, and a bit of like a middle of the run G1 for Hinare, and a bit of a shock to the system for Bolton Oleg in terms of, oh my God, this is what a round robin tournament's like, right? And so, for that reason, I don't remember the results of that matchup, but I don't really think it's going to play a factor here. I have Bolton Oleg putting down Hinare as well.
I have Bolton putting down Hinare, yeah. On the other side now, Jake Lee, Hiroki Goto. I think I like Hiroki Goto. I think Goto would get past Jake Lee. Just going on what you said in terms of pacing, I think Jake Lee might sort of put all he has into beating Yoshihashi quick, and I think Goto might not afford him that opportunity.
Yeah, I absolutely the same thing there.
And then Callum Newman, Hartley Jackson. Do you believe in miracles? Could Hartley Jackson have the Cinderella run of a lifetime through to the finals? I think it's going to do his absolute damnedest to make people believe that might be the case, and I think he is going to give Callum Newman more trouble than Newman expects, but I would have Callum Newman beating Hartley Jackson. Yeah,
I wrote the same thing down, and that is no discrediting to Hartley Jackson. I think that 2026 already a pretty big year for Hartley Jackson, winning his first piece of championship gold in New Japan Pro Wrestling. First Tokyo Dome matchup after 25 plus years in the sport of pro wrestling. I mean, there's been a lot of ups for Hartley Jackson. I just don't think New Japan Cup is going to be one of them.
We both had Shota Umino over Chase Owens. That gives you Shota versus Yujiro. I think Shota Umino really wants to very quickly, I think, get out of the House of Torture mines, get out the kitchen of the House of Torture as much as possible. And I think that Shota would ride the momentum from March the 8th and get past Yujiro.
Absolutely. Again, we're spending too much time together, Chris. We gotta come up with a different idea. But yes, I think Shota Umino and Yujiro Takahashi being what it is.
Maybe we might diverge on Oiwa and Zack Sabre Jr. Not just from last year's New Japan Cup, but Oiwa's very first New Japan Cup in 2022 as Young Lion, being defeated by Zack Sabre Jr. as well. Here we have third time lucky. Zack wants to make Oiwa a world champion by the time he's 30 years of age, but he's hardly going to let Oiwa, he's not going to give him a leg up by laying his guard down in this match. But I think, maybe third time's the charm. I have Oiwa beating Zack Sabre Jr.
I have the same thing. I think that this has to be the one. I think Ryohei Oiwa is, we talk about third time's the charm. Oiwa has thrown a lot of things at the wall in the singles division, and it just has not stuck. I think one of those reasons could be the fact that he hasn't manage to surpass Zack Sabre Jr. I think that, Zack saying, I'm going to make Oiwa a heavyweight champion one day. Well, Zack can say that as much as he wants, but Oiwa has to do it. And I think the only way to really take a step forward to getting that is not just winning New Japan Cup, but beating Zack Sabre Jr. in the process of doing so. And so I think Oiwa, it has to be this year for him.
Okay, so we're down to our last 8. March the 15th, first quarterfinals. I have Urumura Shingo. You have Driller Shingo. I have Yuya Uemura beating Shingo Takagi and making the Final Four.
I have Drilla Maloney beating Shingo Takagi and making the Final Four.
Okay. Yeah.
And to be quite honest with you, I think a lot of people are going to look at me and say, why? And I don't have a concrete answer for that. I think that, sometimes we pick off of vibes, Chris. There's a general feeling, but also talking about direction for Joe Maloney in 2026. Obviously, wanting to make the War Dragons IWGP Tag Team Champions, but also going back to the genesis of Maloney's heavyweight run here in New Japan Pro Wrestling, coming off the back of Shingo Takagi. I think there'd be something really poetic if Maloney could manage to put down Takagi to get to his first New Japan Cup semifinal, and for that reason, and really, you saw it, a heart laid bare, center of the ring in Osaka. Maloney saying, "Yeah, I'm still just as dedicated to New Japan Pro Wrestling as I've been," and I think there's a need to fight in the cup. I think it's going to be the one.
All right. Also on March 15th, we have picked Narita Boltin, and I say Boltin Oleg gets past the never openweight champion Ren Narita, and I think that is going to. I think that people they're going to throw babies in the air. It's going to be a massive celebration to see Boltin beat the never openweight champion of the first never singles championship that he had in his career. And you're thinking of this prospect. I think that's going to set up a massive spring for the big man from Kazakhstan, because I have in the back of my mind, I'm picking him over Tomohiro Ishii to win the strong title in New Beginning USA. I think here he has the potential to beat the world television champion in the first round and beating the never champion here in the quarters. That sets him up for really to have his pick of singles championships in New Japan.
I don't know if I've never called you this before. I may never call you this again, but I don't know if you're more of the optimist than I am or not, or what the situation is here. I feel like we're switching roles here, Chris. But Ren Narita is my choice, and I feel maybe I'm on the cynical side of the playing field there. I'd love to see Boltin Oleg do it. I'd love to see Boltin go through the semifinal into the final. I'd be very happy to see that on paper and on our television screens as well. But I just do not know, and maybe Boltin Oleg will have it, but I do not know if Boltin yet has the key to stopping the numbers game and how impactful the numbers game will be for Ren Narita the way that it was against Aaron Wolf back in Osaka. I'm struggling to believe in anyone at this point to be able to stop that numbers game. We talk about all the time, you back House of Torture into a wall, you put them in a corner, they always manage to come back stronger, and we thought, man, House of Torture may be incredibly minimized with the departure of Evil from New Japan Pro Wrestling, and I just feel this storm coming in to the New Japan Pro Wrestling sphere and darkening the landscape even more than we've seen already, and so for that reason, I'm going to have Narita in through to the semifinal.
Oof. Okay, so the northeast side, we both have Newman Goto in the quarterfinals. Rematch from Dontaku of the IWGP World Heavyweight Championship last May. And I think this time Newman, with the growth that he's had in the last year, will come through. So I have Callum Newman making the Final Four.
I think the exact same thing. Callum Newman has really been showing it as of recent. I think Callum Newman puts down Goto on March 17th.
And then on the other side, Oiwa and Shota. That's a really interesting one, March 17th. Wow, which way does that go? Because I think that's new generation versus super new generation.
Yeah.
It's a toss up, but I would have to go Shota. I think the track record that he's had, as you said, made the finals last year. I think this is the year for Shota to make the run to the finals again. So I'm saying Shota over Oiwa.
I marinated on this one for a while. I flipped a couple of coins. I went through the ranks for it, and I think really for me, this match on March 17th that I'm assuming will happen, and again we don't know, but if Shota Umino wrestles Ryohei Oiwa on March 17th, I believe the winner of the match wins New Japan Cup. That's my and I think that's going to be a bit of a tough one to call, but again, you and I on the same wavelength here. I am choosing Shota Umino for a semifinal run at the least.
So our final four, my final four are Uemura, Shingo. Uemura. Let's see, Boltin, Callum, and Shota, and then you have Maloney, Narita, Newman, and Shota. So we're disagreed on the left side. I would have Uemura and Boltin. I like Yuya Uemura. Like I said, I had Uemura going all the way to the finals. And I think Boltin's hot streak ends on March the 20th, that first night in Nagaoka.
I have, out of my left side bracket, Drill Maloney versus Ren Narita. Once again, and I don't know, maybe I might be in a depression, Chris. I don't know what's going on with me. I am selecting Ren Narita as New Japan Cup 2026 finalist over Drill Maloney on that night.
Wow. Okay. And then, you've got Callum and Shota on the other side. So that's a very difficult, the Hontai defender, Shota Umino, resolutely so. Callum Newman, United Empire, the chip on the shoulder, the big run that he'll have, I think a lot of momentum behind him, but I say Shota Umino over Callum Newman.
And the same goes for me there.
And I think I think there's the undertones there. Shota Umino was never able to beat Will Ospreay. Mm-hmm. But him beating Callum Newman, oh man, that's going to make Callum Newman really hot. So I think, I get the feeling that yes, Shota would beat Callum Newman, but that would be far from the last time that we see those two face each other in 2026, in my opinion. So that gets us down to, we both agree on Shota Umino on one side. I have Shota versus Yuya Uemura, so Yusho tag exploding. The alliance exploding. And I think Yuya Uemura. I think I'm going to have Yuya Uemura beat Shota Umino. I think the second year in a row, so near and yet so far, Shota Umino just falls short.
Wow. How could we get so close and yet so far from one another here, Chris? When I drew this bracket out, I didn't think to myself, what would be my favorite New Japan Cup main event that we could possibly have in the final? I didn't think to myself, what would tell the best story? I just wrote down who I think was going to win what match, and it's so interesting to me that it's led us once again back to this generational rivalry of Shota Umino and Ren Narita. And it's something that we have not exactly explored too much in recent moments. G135 being the last time that those two would have gone one-on-one, I believe. And it was a match that was what it was on paper and in the arena, but a lot more to fight for in a New Japan Cup final, especially with the undertones that we talk about all the time with Narita having a career that is very much fueled on his hatred for Shota Umino. Everything that Narita has done in his career has been to spite his former World Tag League partner, his former dojo trainee partner in Shota Umino. And for that reason, I think Narita is going to have a lot to fight for on that night. But I think Shota is a step or two wiser than the last time that he stepped into the ring with Narita. And for that reason, I have Shota Umino winning the New Japan Cup final.
All right. Well, we'll see what happens. So the winner of that tournament, of course, faces Yoda Tsuji in April, Sakura Genesis, for the IWGP Heavyweight Championship.
Right. And you know what? We've gone through this whole prediction run. I'm probably going to post my graphic and get flamed for it on Twitter, and that's fine. That's the circle of life. But, truth be told, I hope I'm wrong. And that's not in a way to spite any of the names I mentioned going to the final. I hope I'm wrong, because one of my favorite things about tournament season, Chris, is that everything, and at least one thing will be shaken up. Like, there is such an unpredictability when it comes to tournament season, and especially when you have a very simplified version of a tournament like the single elimination New Japan Cup. You know, you lose and you're done. And that's going to affect you one way or another going into, the rest of 2026. We're setting the pace for tournament season in 2026 with this tournament. I can't wait to see it.